Guys, I want to welcome you to another episode of the Advisory Board podcast, where we bring in experts from the franchise community to help you learn how to build brands that last and get you some actionable ideas that can help you to scale quickly. And I've got Colt Florence with me today. And guys, if you haven't seen Colt, big dude, looks like a defensive end because he was. And but he's now the senior vice president of franchise development of Five Star Franchising. You guys probably know Scott and Chad and Andrew and the gang, but it's Mosquito Shield, the Card My Yard, the 1-800 Packhouse, Bio One, got you covered, Five Star Bath Solutions, and probably more. Like it's a good series of brands. So Colt also was at Authority Brands before. That's where you and I first met, actually. Um,
Right.
yeah, 10 years of frandev experience. He's super into analytics, and we might dive into that, although it's not the key topic today. But if you haven't had a chance to talk to him, you'll also find he's an avid cryptocurrency trader. And when he left college, he actually was ranked top 10 in the nation as a sales professional, which is pretty groovy. I didn't even know there was a thing to be ranked in as a sales pro. So no surprises there. Well, tell us a little bit more about you. Tell us a little bit more about what you're doing at Five Star, and then we'll jump into the topic.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, Dave. Yeah, I mean, just you saying not too many people knew that there's that sales, I'd say sales career or graduate. Probably doesn't look very good for me knowing I was in the top 10. Maybe there's only 10 of us to begin with, so who knows? But no, yeah, so as you mentioned, Senior Vice President of Franchise Development for Five Star Franchising. Been here for almost a year now. Was at Authority Brands for 4 years of Vice President of Franchise Development, and honestly, fell into franchising and franchise development like I'd say most people do just by chance. Had a gentleman reach out to me about 10 years ago and said, "Hey, I'm starting this franchise development company. I want you to come work at it. You're a great salesman." And I said, "You know what? I don't know anything about franchising." And he said, "Well, welcome to the club. That's what I want. I want somebody who knows about sales and really doesn't know about franchising." And lo and behold, that gentleman's name was Ryan Comby. He became my
Okay.
first mentor within the franchise space. He had spent a lot of years with ChemDry and enhanced wood renewal, and I fell in love with the industry. And so spent the past really 10 years in frandev, loving what I'm doing, helping people find better trajectories within their life, whether it be professional or personal, and have found it extremely fulfilling. So not only
Mhm.
happy to be in the industry, but happy to be here today too.
No, thanks, man. I appreciate it. Well, guys, one of the things that I loved about Colt is he's got kind of a unique look at what makes the right franchise owner. Who are the right candidates to be working with? And so, Colt, maybe what you could do is walk us through. We're going to talk about three things that you're looking for, three specific things with franchise candidates. Do you mind maybe just sharing us a little bit about those three main categories, and then we'll dig into each one together today.
Yeah, great. So when we take a look at who makes the best franchise owners out there and what I've seen in my experience with working with the thousands of franchisees we brought into the systems, the three different things that I think differentiate candidates pretty quick for us is going to be one, are they willing to put in the work? And so are they going to be stepping into this knowing it's business ownership and they're willing to put in the hard work to be successful?
Mhm.
Two is I always have a comparison between entrepreneurs and intrapreneurs. And a lot of times as franchisors, we think we want an entrepreneur to come in and be a franchisee when the reality is we want an intrapreneur, somebody that could come in and follow systems and implement and execute off of those systems extremely well. And then the last one is based off of those systems, we want people who will come in, implement, and make them better, can see the flaws within it. A lot of times as a franchisor, we tend to think we have the best solutions, and the reality is sometimes we don't. Our franchisees are able to find better solutions. So we want people that'll implement systems and make them better. So, sum it up is people that work hard, people that'll follow systems, and people that'll follow and make systems better than what they currently are.
Awesome. And guys, I hope you enjoyed the podcast episode today. And no, I'm kidding. Yeah, so
Sorry.
no, you're good. You're good. Oh, well, we haven't even scratched the surface there. It's just the framework, man. So I love what you shared. And I'll share just a personal anecdote about me. I'm pretty entrepreneurial. Like when I was 5, I started my first company and didn't, register an LLC at that time, but just went out door to door knock and try to make money. I find like I'm not the best. Like I'm a pretty good friend. I was a franchisee, but I might not be the best because I'm really not a give me the systems kind of a guy. I'm more like a let me make the systems kind of a guy. And
Yeah.
and there was a little bit of not like mean or anything, but just like with great. I love the guys that ran Team Up, but sometimes we would just find ourselves butting heads about stuff because CEO of ClientTether, Dave, was kind of like, yeah, I kind of have this idea that's probably really good and we should do it. And it's not my job as the franchise owner, right? So
Yeah.
how did you come up with this as being kind of a criteria? Because I'm guessing there's a pretty good story, or at least a series of experiences you had where you're like, I see the difference, and now I know to zero in on intrapreneur rather than entrepreneur. How'd you come up with that differentiation?
Yeah, it's interesting. So if we were to go down the list, hard worker, entrepreneur, and then make systems better,
Hmm.
I think one of the difficult things about franchise systems is a lot of people come in and they think it's guaranteed success because they're buying into a franchise system. They're looking at it and saying, hey, because you're providing me a training, support, a successful business model, this is going to be a very successful venture for me. And the reality is that it couldn't be further from the truth, right? So, using your experience, you came in as a hard worker, but you also had a lot of other ideas and things you wanted to implement. A
Yeah.
lot of people don't come in with that hard work mentality. They look at it and say, because I am buying a franchise system, this is going to be a
Hmm.
very successful venture. And the reality is that doesn't happen. And the comparison I always like to use that I found best over the years is, let's say I decide one day that I want to be extremely fit. And I'm saying, you know what, I'm going to get in the best shape of my life. I am going to feel very confident and attractive within myself, whatever it may be. So, in order to do that, I'm going to hire a personal trainer who's going to help me along this journey. And that personal trainer steps in and they say, okay, based off of our experience, here's all the exercises you should be doing. Here's how often you should be doing them. Here's the days you're going to be doing them. Here's the diet you need to follow. Here's why you need to follow it. Here's the scientific approach behind it. And I say, perfect. That is fantastic. But then guess what? I don't go to the gym. And I don't follow that diet. And I love that comparison because what we walk each one of our franchisees through is really saying, hey, even though we were providing you with the systems, the process, the experience, the model, if you do not come in and you do not work hard, you will not notice the progress. You will not notice the successes that you're going to have. And so, going back to that list, that was always the first thing for me is a lot of people came in and said, because I'm buying a franchise system, I will be successful. And the reality is you will only be successful if you implement and you get your butt off the couch and you go work really hard.
Yeah.
And it's the same as that comparison with fitness. If you don't follow the diet, if you don't make it to the gym, doesn't matter how great of a personal trainer you hire to help you through that process, you will stay in your current spot. And
Yeah.
so going back to your question, I know I steered a little bit away from the entrepreneur, but it's
Yeah.
unless somebody's willing to put in the work from day one, everything else doesn't matter within a franchise system.
Yeah, well, I see why that's a major screening element for you too, right? Because and tell me how you feel about this. There's so many brands that are just in love with the idea of finding like investors. Okay, we want investors. We want people with lots of money, Ivy League backgrounds, lots of money, who are looking to just come in and have a business operated for them, essentially. But that's there are very few concepts that have legitimate absentee or semi-absentee ownership opportunities. So. How do you feel like that? But there's so many people advertising that. So how do you feel like that's changing expectations in the marketplace and maybe making it harder to find these guys that are going to get off the couch?
Yeah, I mean it's extremely difficult. Semi-passive or passive opportunities are all the rage right now. And the
Hmm.
question I always ask is if there really are business models out there where you could be passive, invest into it, and they're going to become ultra successful, what's the reason that Jeff Bezos hasn't bought up every single one of those opportunities in the United States, right? What's the reason he hasn't just thrown his cash at it and said this is going to 10x no matter what, I'm excited? Or what's the reason Elon hasn't? And the reality is because most of the time those do not exist. It requires somebody to come in and put in the hard work. And so for these investor models of people just looking to throw cash behind it, what you have to realize is if you're not willing to put in the work, you have to pay somebody who is.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
so if you are trying to take that model and be passive within the business, you need to be prepared to give somebody equity within your business who is then going to be motivated enough to step in and grow the company for what it needs to be.
Yeah.
Very few times does it work for somebody to say, I'm just going to give somebody a manager a salary and they're going to grow my business to my expectations. That just doesn't happen. They don't have enough skin in the game or motivation to do it. And so,
Mhm.
are we open to it? Yes. But if you're not going to be the one that is willing to put in the work, you need to find somebody who is. And normally that's going to be through an equity position to make them motivated enough to grow the company because it's theirs now as well.
Yeah, well, there's a psychological side to that you're talking about. It's really important. Just hiring, Joe Schmo to run my business or to manage the firm, it's not the same, right? The level of commitment, the level of engagement, even the skill level oftentimes is very different than the owner. So Have you seen that work well in the past?
Yeah, I'd say there's two different scenarios you can look at. There's a from day one and from like a year three aspect, right? And there was a legend in the space, Ron Bender, who I always love to quote things that he did within the sales cycle. And one phrase he used was, "We do earned absentee." If you want to step away from the business, you want to hire a manager, you earn it through cash flow and you build your business and able to do it. And the reason I say that is because normally what works best is year three, when the business is up and running, it's operational, it's cash flow positive. At that point, you can bring in a manager because you've made it over most of the harder hurdles, the humps in the business. From day one, it's always more difficult because you're now stepping into the difficult process of building a business from 18 to 24 months. And so compensating somebody correctly to take on all those difficulties within the business has always been a hard balance, not only from how much equity do you want to give them, but how much of the business are you willing to give away? And so, if I'm speaking honestly, it's always the 3 year ones who step out that make it work a lot better because they then built the business themselves and can step away
Yeah.
versus somebody from day one who said, I'm going to bring in a manager. It's a hard balance to find the motivation through equity for somebody to make it over those massive hurdles and shortcomings for the first 18 to 24 months of the business.
Yeah, spot on, dude. Spot on. And it aligns well with my personal experience as a multi-unit owner, but also just it it's the growth rate isn't the same. It's just not the same. And as a
It's not.
franchisor, one, you want people to be highly successful. That's rule number one of franchising, right? Is you make sure your franchisees are wildly successful, and then everything else happens properly after that, and your validations get better, right? Like you're producing more royalty revenue, which means the franchisor has more to reinvest back into the business to grow it and support it. And like everything works right if you do that. But if you get guys that think they can come in without without getting off the couch, there's a big hurdle still, even with the franchise system, to
Yeah.
get a business rolling. And yeah, and I think that's the faux pas. I still see it all the time. I won't highlight anyone. A certain segment of franchising that talks about that all the time. And and boy, does it cause some ripples. But I like this earned absentee ownership. Man, Ron was awesome. So you can always quote him
He
on the
was.
podcast. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's the best way to look at it is if you want to step away from the business, earn it through net profitability and cash flow, right? And then you could justify it. But nobody's going to grow your business or be as motivated to do it as you. And so put in the work, put in the effort, the sweat, those first couple of years, and get to the point to where you can hire people to take responsibilities off of your plate.
Yeah, totally agree. Totally agree. And it is done through cash flow or equity, right? So equity structuring is
Right,
good too, but if you give someone 2% equity, there's no incentive. They're not going to work their butt.
right,
They're going to walk away from that and go get a higher paying job before they're willing to spend weekends and nights working for you.
correct.
So slide into the back to the entrepreneur. So first thing,
Yeah.
they've got to be willing to work their butts off. Check. Totally agree with that. And then come back to this entrepreneur versus entrepreneur. Like where help us differentiate between the two, and then explain like why is that such a big catalyst or like a big decision tree moment for you guys as you're deciding who's a good owner.
Yeah, so I heard this years ago on a podcast, and it was the difference between an entrepreneur and an entrepreneur. An entrepreneur is the person who comes up with the big ideas, the systems, they start the business, they get it up and running. An entrepreneur is the person who steps into the business at that point, and the business couldn't survive or run without them being in place and actually implementing and running those systems and making them substantially better. And so I think one of the fallacies within franchising and franchise development has been we want entrepreneurs, we want entrepreneurs. And the reality is, well, why? Why do you want somebody who is going to come in and say, I want to do everything my way from day one? I'm the big picture guy. I have all the right ideas. You actually want the opposite. You want somebody who's going to come in and say, I'm going to follow every single system you put into place. I'm going to read every single manual, and I'm going to be dependent on you guys and the support that you give me to go out and run my business. I'm going to depend on the advice that you're giving me. And so what we always look for isn't necessarily somebody who's going to be the big picture, I want to own my own business. It's going to be the person who comes in and actually says, hey, I've been very successful within my job. I'm very successful because I've followed all the systems, the training. I've become an expert within the space. I've actually made my company substantially better through the impact that I'm making on it. I'm kind of nervous to leave that job to start my own business. That's like the first trigger for us of saying, yes, you will be a perfect franchisee because you've been doing it your entire career already. You've been
Mhm.
taking processes and systems, making them better, growing companies companies, that's exactly what franchise ownership is. And so we actually have taken an opposite approach of those are the people we want who will come in from day one, listen to the training, follow the procedures we have in place, use the systems, and take every single one of those and grow a company and make it better based off of it.
Hmm. Yeah, I love that. I love that. How do you find them though? Like how do you determine if somebody is one or the other? Like it sounds like there are a couple of cues you're listening for.
Yeah, it's a great question. So normally you find them because somebody is fed up of no longer having the correct balance from their professional life to their personal life. And that happens all the time. You see people who are in C-suites or senior positions within their company and they're saying, "Yeah, I'm making great money. I love those benefits behind it, but I've now entered into a stage into my life where I'm just not able to spend time with my kids or my spouse." And so I'm making the risky move, or I'm at least considering the risky move to leave all the security and comfort for the things that I feel are more important right now, which is going to be my family and the balance that I'm experiencing, or even future financial potential. So
Mhm.
those are the first key indicators we hear is like, great. So you've actually become very successful within your career. You've been able to implement those systems and bring a lot of value to your company. There's no reason you should be able to do it. What makes us nervous are the people that come in from day one and they say, yeah, actually, I started a landscaping company. It's doing about $300,000 a year. I've been in this for 12 years because now we're looking at that saying, okay, so you
Whoa.
started a business, you haven't been successful within that business, you're bouncing all over the place. This is the other, the fifth time you've considered a diversification within the past 4 years, even though your business you're in right now is not achieving high levels of profitability. Those are the conversations that actually scare us most of the time. And
Mhm.
so you can find out pretty quick within those conversations that we're having whether or not somebody's coming through from a secure position but they want more in life versus somebody who is just used to chaos and they've never been able to get out of it.
Yeah. No, no, no. Yeah, he might be working his butt off too, right? So he checks box number one, and yet
Yep.
that's not your guy. Also a little ADHD. You can't focus on one thing. That's not the best. Not the best.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
Okay, perfect. Now tell me this. I mean, and if you're comfortable sharing, obviously no names or even brands, but have you learned this lesson the hard way before? Like, did you go down the road where like, maybe I'll make an exception for Bob, and then you did, and then you saw the outcome that was not what you were hoping for?
Oh my gosh, so many times, so many times. And that, early in my career was actually the opposite. Every time I'd get on a call with somebody who was very entrepreneurial minded, they're saying those things, I would get very excited about it because I'm looking at it as like, yes, this is somebody who's taken destiny into their own hands. They're going to be able to kill it. And what I've seen time and time again is actually those guys struggled the most within the system as they stepped into it because they were less dependent on the franchisor to help them within the business. They didn't like to follow the systems because they felt like they had better options or a better idea than the systems that they had in place. And so it was time and time again where I slowly realized, like, actually, no, the people who were coming in and are a bit more tentative on the calls, a bit more reserved, maybe a bit more nervous, have more fears, are actually the ones that make the better franchisees, even though within the sales cycle we don't realize it. And so we had to switch our train of thought of actually saying, no, let's spend more time with people who are more nervous. Even though going into business ownership, we look at it a lot of times and say, yeah, nervous, you shouldn't be. You got to dive into this head first. It's actually the people who are nervous and more dependent on systems to be successful that we look for. So going back to your question, yes, time and time again, I actually saw the people I was excited about have more difficulties within the business, and then the ones who are nervous that went into it actually take off and become rookies of the year, franchisee of the year, and that's when I started drawing the correlations between it.
That's smart. Yeah, and you wouldn't think it almost seems counterintuitive, doesn't it?
Yep,
Yeah.
100%. That's exactly it. And so after you do it so many times and there's a strong enough correlation, you either learn from it or you just continue in ignorance. And I said, I'll learn from it.
Good choice. Option A, please. Well, that it almost seems like it's a bit of a contradiction, though, this and your third point, which is okay, we want someone who's an entrepreneur, somebody who wants to implement and ferociously follow the program, right? And then, but the third thing you're looking for is someone who's willing to kind of audit and offer improvement recommendations to the system, which almost feels like we're swinging toward the entrepreneurial side, but it's not the same thing. So maybe can you help us differentiate between the person that's trying to implement and change everything, entrepreneur, versus the guy that's just willing to audit and offer up recommendations through the process? There's something really fundamentally different between the two.
Yeah, have you seen the movie The Founder about the gentleman that founded the McDonald's franchise system?
I have not watched it. No, is it good?
Oh my gosh, it is so good because it summarizes the differences perfectly. So what ends up happening is this gentleman goes to McDonald's one day, realizes they are doing things in a revolutionary manner, wants to franchise it, begins to franchise, and the first couple of people he goes to are his buddies who are extremely wealthy, they own other businesses, and he says, "Buy this, I promise you it's going to make you so much money." So his buddies buy it, and the next thing you know, he goes to one of their locations a couple months later, and they're offering fried chicken within the location. And he's like, "This isn't McDonald's. This isn't the system in process. Why are you doing this?" Calls his buddy up, and his buddy said, "Well, my customers were asking about fried chicken, so I thought that'd be the best way of going about it." And he says, "No, that is not the McDonald's way. That's not the process and systems we have in place." Well, vice versa, he now starts to transition more towards people who are not extremely wealthy, didn't
Mhm.
come from vast business experience, and those franchisees start doing extremely well. And one night he's going out to dinner with one of those franchisees, with him and his wife, and they say, "Hey, we're running into a lot of issues with our ice cream machine and our milkshake machine breaking down all the time. And our customers are coming in and they're requesting it. And so we actually found a much better solution. You take this, you mix it in with milk, you stir it up. It actually makes a milkshake substantially quicker than what the machines are offering. And it's a lot cheaper for us as a franchisee." They give it to him. He tries it. He says, "This is amazing." So now they start implementing that into every single McDonald's franchise location because not only is it better than the current one they have in place, but also it's saving franchisees a lot of money. And so that's the two big comparisons I always like to bring up is you have one franchisee that said, "We love the system that's in place. We found a better way to do it." And you have another franchisee that's saying, "I'm not even following the system. I just think this will be so much better." And so that's what we always look for with our candidates coming in, and our franchisees are the ones that say, "We know that the business model is proven. We know that the processes in place work. We want to make them 1% better though. What can we do? Can we increase our profitability? Can we increase the amount of usage we're getting? Whatever it is, we want to make the system 1% better versus coming in and saying, 'Yeah, I'm just going to scrap everything you're doing and implement something completely different,' because now you're just going back into entrepreneurship." And so hopefully that example kind of summarizes the differences between the two. It's always been the best one that I've seen as to what we look for with our franchisees and the feedback they give as to what is healthy versus not healthy.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate it. The hard part must be like, how do you find people like this, right? Like, how do you determine that somebody's really, entrepreneurial, but they're also willing to like invest time and resources into being creative within the model versus outside of the model?
Yeah, yeah. I think their track record speaks for themselves, right? So when you get somebody who is in their mid 30s, 40s, they're very high up within their current company, you don't get to a position like that by not spending your entire career of taking current systems and processes and making them better, or taking current employees and making them better. And so when we speak with people who are in those type of positions, they actually are coming with a track record of doing this for the past 20 years. They've just been doing it for the man rather than themselves. And so we actually take a look at people who have been in a career for the past 20 years and are in a high position as a positive because they have a track record of taking systems and processes and making it better for their existing company. Now the question is, can they do it within the franchise system? So that's always a key indicator for us, is saying you've been so successful making other people a lot of money and making those systems and processes better. We're excited for you to do it for yourself.
Yeah, yeah, amen. And how do you so have you I'm not sure if you ever read or heard of the Jersey Mike study they did a long time ago where they were trying to figure out like who are the most successful franchise owners in our system. And initially I think the thesis was they thought the well-capitalized, well-educated people were going to be the best. Have you
Hmm.
seen the results of this study?
I don't think I have. No.
I think it was Gary De Jesus who shared it with me, but in a quick nutshell, they found that the people that were the most successful were actually the people most passionate about the brand. And
Hmm.
food's different, right, than home services. No one's like, I'm passionate about Bio One. Well, uh, you have to be pretty morbid to be passionate about that going in, but it's an incredible business opportunity that serves so many people, right? But I don't think in the home services space, people are like super passionate about window coverings, like got you covered, or or bathroom remodeling, but they really are passionate about becoming an entrepreneur. So I don't know if it's the same, right, in the home service space, but how do you guys determine passion? Because passion was the one thing when Jersey Mike's people are like, I freaking love Jersey Mike's. I want to own one of these things. That person outperformed the MBA guy quite significantly in their study. They have
Yeah.
numbers. So, but how can you measure passion? Have you guys found a way to do that where you kind of is that a like the hidden fourth factor that you guys look for too? Or how do you equate that into the way you guys are looking for candidates?
Yeah, it's a great question. And within the home service space, it is rare when you get somebody who is passionate about what they look at. A lot of
Right.
times candidates come to us and they're like, "Hey, I just had a friend talk to me about it. I figured I'd look into it, but I'm not promising anything special," versus like a gym where they're like a fitness nut and they cannot wait to open and run a gym on a daily basis or a restaurant. And
Right.
so what we always look for is how passionate are you towards the goals you're trying to achieve? What
Mm.
is that goal, right? Are you looking for more balance with the family? Is it financial goals? What is the goal where you want to be 24 months from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now? Because if those goals are in place and they feel a lot of passion for them, they're going to want to find the quickest vehicle to get to those goals. And
Mhm.
so whether it be through blinds, whether it be through, cleaning up crime scenes, whatever it may be, if it's the
Mhm.
quickest vehicle or to get them to those goals that they feel so passionate about, they will quickly become passionate about the vehicle that they are in. And so that's always what we take a look at is what are your goals? How much passion do you feel towards them? And then can we reverse engineer back to show you why this vehicle or this path is going to be the quickest? And then people become quickly passionate about putting blinds on somebody's window when they realize it's going to get them to where they want to be 3 years from now.
Oh, 100%. And the crazy thing is people, savvy franchise buyers, they get really animated and passionate about the P&Ls in your space, right? Because P&Ls for restaurants are not sexy at all. I mean, major investment, capital, lease agreements that are long term, like major overhead and liability, and then sometimes a lot less cash flow than even a home's like putting blinds on people's windows, right? It's crazy.
Right.
I don't know we can't talk about that on here, right? Disclosures, but man, I can say from a guy who's not disclosing that I've looked at, my wife and I looked at like 15 or so brands before we decided to buy the one we did. And what hooked us was the P&L. Like my wife
Yep.
was the one that pointed that out. And I'm like the business nerd, push those up. But she was the one that was like, you know what? Like I had a client who was like, I'll give you three locations. I'll give you three territories. You won't have to pay me a fee because I want you to operate one of my things. I was like, that's cool. Hey, hon. And she's like, well, where's this item 19? And I was like, well, he doesn't have what you want,
Yeah.
and we ain't buying that one. So like it was,
Yeah.
I think that people, what you're right, when they've got a goal, like they know where they want to go and they're passionate about it, doesn't really matter what the vehicle is at the end of the day. If it's going to get them where they want to be, that's the
Amen to that. Yeah, and that's the thing is, and what a lot of people don't realize is when you get into business ownership, you're going to feel passionate no matter what. You get passionate about the customers that you're servicing, you get
Mhm.
passionate about the employees that you hire and the impact you're making on their life. And a lot of people don't realize that. But yes, at the end of the day, the financials behind the business should actually be the driving factor behind majority of the decisions that you make because why are you going into business ownership if you're not going to be profitable and achieving goals based off of it? Home services provide that, I'd say better than most from what I've seen.
Oh yeah, I mean, especially when you look at cash in to cash out and the ramp to cash, it's hard to beat, honestly.
It
Really,
is. Yep.
especially when you get the right brands behind them. Five Star has a pretty good track record of building brands that can generate good revenue and good support systems. So they've been doing that for what, 20 years or something now? They've been doing
Yeah, yeah, they're
it.
they're they're really good at what they do.
Yeah, they are. They are. And they give a dang. Brand presidents, I think almost all your brand presidents are solid humans, right? So
They are.
I mean, from a buyer side, that's another thing you got to look at. And I'm sure a reason why you were excited to come work with this group is what a good leadership team. Like people you can trust to take care of the people that are going to be signing up to put life and finances on the line to then start their own business. Like it's easier to make that path open up for people when you're comfortable with the people taking care of them.
It is. And now it's actually funny you say that. Our core focus at Five Star Franchising is empowering our franchise partner success. And to your point, that is one of the main reasons that I aligned with them was I was taking a look at it saying, knowing you guys are so focused on franchisee success is important, especially where I'm the one out there putting my name on the line, my team's name on the line of saying, guys,
Hmm.
trust us. This is a great brand. And
Hmm.
so, yes, our brand presidents, our leadership team, all of us truly believe and bleed that on a daily basis. We do everything we can to support our franchisees.
Yeah, no, and I see it. I see it. I've been to one of your conferences before. I know a bunch of the people there as well that own your brand. So yeah, you guys do well. Tell me, we've got a couple minutes. You'd mentioned as in our preamble before we started recording that you're really into analytics and in frandev. It's funny you say that because a lot of the folks I talk to, they're not like really analytics driven. So I'm curious, like maybe what are a couple of nuggets? Like what are things that you're doing as you're leading these franchise development teams now that you know lead to success?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I think one of the worst things anybody, especially in franchise development, could do is make a decision without the data to provide it
Mhm.
and or to support it. And so it's so often we're trying to make adjustments to our sales cycle and the content we're sending out and the approach that we're taking, but we have no data on the back end to see whether or not we're actually focusing in the right areas.
Mhm.
And so every decision made within franchise development should be an educated decision based off of what the numbers are telling us. And
Right.
when you actually take a look at sales, it's a very simple mathematical equation. And if it's not adding up, you see where you're missing within that equation.
Hmm.
And so what we've done is we go really in depth with tracking sales cycle performance, attrition rate within the different stages within our sales cycle, where candidates are dropping off, lead source, total lead source spend, momentum increases within that lead source spend, cost per lead, especially with broker networks, total territory checks coming in, events that we've done, increases or decreases within territory checks. And so every single aspect of what we do is data driven first, and then we make changes to our strategy through that data.
Awesome.
Um,
Yeah.
a comparison I've always given that I like is it's like if you're a coach going into a game and you're just keeping your fingers crossed that you outscore the other team, you have failed as a coach, right?
Amen. Yeah.
If you're a coach going into a game and you know what your players average from a field goal percentage, you know where they're shooting, how often they're shooting, and you're designing plays around the strengths that they have and making sure that you're going to create enough attempts, enough shots, leading to a field goal percentage that's going to outscore the other team. Plus, on defense, doing everything you need to, you have successfully fulfilled your position as a coach. And that's our approach. We take it 5 stars. We know exactly what's working, what's converting the best, what's not converting the best, and then we're making decision and coming up with plays against that.
Yeah. Have you watched Moneyball?
Oh, I love Moneyball. Love
Yes.
Moneyball.
Well, so I had a Moneyball moment. My daughter's a figure skater. She's 17 and
Hmm.
started when she was 13. So she's like 8 years behind most girls that are in her age group. And she's caught up to them. You have to go through you have to pass all these skills so you can start competing at that level. Well, so now she's competing with girls her age, and she's placing and doing well. And she's 8 years behind these girls as far as training, but she's been pushing it hard to get caught up. But we went to a recent competition and I was like, she didn't score very well. Like she ended up getting, I think, seventh or sixth out of a group of
Hmm.
11, like just a little below midway point. And I was like, that's not normal for her. So she and I sat down with a spreadsheet and I was like, all right, let's analyze everyone who scored better than you and worse. Let's figure out how. Because I don't know. I've never been a figure skater, like
Yeah.
I don't know how this works. So we kind of took the Moneyball approach. We just like broke down everybody's performances and realized even if she'd scored perfectly on all the elements in her performance, she would have not even gotten third place. She would have maybe gotten fourth. And I was like, well, this is kind of screwed up. And then so we're going to meet with her coaches to coach them on the analytics. Like she needs to have
Yeah.
this move, this move, this move, and this move in her routines if she's even going to have a prayer at placing in the top three. And it surprises me though. It's they're really good coaches on technique, right? Technique, technique, technique. And
Yeah.
yet, like it blew my mind. I realized they have no idea that how they're building routines is impacting these girls' ability to perform and compete. That's anyway, again, money, I guess
It's a
money ball.
perfect example.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean,
So
she went into the competition with no chance of winning, regardless of how much practice she put into it. Right. And so, perfect example of how you should approach every situation when there's data to support it. And if you're not tracking the data, you're doing something severely wrong.
yeah, and you mentioned a couple of key metrics I want to circle back to briefly. You talked about deal momentum as something your guys are measuring. I'm not sure if that was quite the same phrase you used, but how are you? And you talked about I think like the time people are spending in sales cycles. Can you break that down? These are areas that we coach people on. I coach them on all the time, but it's surprising to me how few people are thinking in these terms. Would you mind sharing a bit on that?
Yeah, so when you take a look at, I'd say, an average sales cycle within franchise development, it's going to be made up of anywhere between 8 to 9 stages. And when
Mhm.
you look at it, average sales cycle length in the industry right now is about 6 months, which is absolutely atrocious, right? And so what we do at Five Stars, when we take a look at our sales cycle, we say how many leads have entered in and how many have closed and what was the average length between those two, and are we happy with that number? So right now, our average sales cycle length is about 58 days. So from the time of a first conversation with us
Yeah.
to the time of them actually signing agreements with us, it's 58 days. We
Yeah.
use that as a benchmark to see how current leads are trending within the sales cycle to make sure are they actually becoming an ideal candidate through how quickly they progress.
Mhm.
So now with the individual stages, you can start to track how quickly do they progress from one stage to the other and what are the dropout rates within each
Mhm.
one of those stages. And
Yeah.
so we know on average between those stages, somebody should be spending about 6 to 10 days, depending on the stage. If they're past that, something is wrong. If they're moving
Yeah.
quicker, we know they're a hot candidate for us, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
We know on average we're going to see an attrition rate within each one of the stages of 25 to 50%. So then we know if we're losing more than 50% of our people that touch validation, then something is happening within the validation stage and we need to address it. If we are losing less than 25% of people validation, we know we have very strong validation within that brand. And so going back to your question, everything leads to momentum of ensuring not only are enough people making it through the stages, are they making it through quick enough, and are we seeing red flags along the way?
Yeah, I love that. And then what are you guys doing when you start to see, let's say you saw deals start to stall at a certain stage in a certain brand. What do you do? Because there's the red flag. Analytics and insights don't always tell us the answers. They just tell us where to look. So what do you do when you start to see, let's say, the validation stage, you see a higher drop off than you expected, or you see that stage elongate. It's not 6 to 10 days, it's now becoming 10 to 15 days, right? What do you then do when you start to see the change in that metric?
Yeah, yeah, great question. The moment the red flag goes up, we say, great, let's audit it. Now, let's take a look at the process and the system we have in place and where the drop off is. So, if we're using validation, for example, and our validation process is we send them a list of franchisees and say, call whoever you want. And it's taking people 3 weeks to make it through that list because franchisees are busy within their business and it's
Hmm.
not progressing as quickly as we would like, we now pivot and we say, great, well, what if we did one-on-one introductions? We have that person tell us who they want to speak to. We reach out to that franchisee. We do a one-on-one introduction to make sure that it's going to go more efficiently and effectively moving forward.
Hmm.
So it's really unique on the situation, but the red flag goes up and we audit it and then we try new things within it to see whether or not it increases the performance or decreases it. And going back to that coach example, the moment you have a player who averages 40% from the 3-point line, and then we're 3 games in and they're now at 20%, that's when you take a look at it and say, okay, is it you're guarded every single time you're shooting? Is it your technique has changed and we have to work on that? You audit, come up with a solution going into the next game, and that's what we do every time a red flag comes up.
Yeah, love that. Great insights, man. And this is, not really on topic with the three things you look for, but when you said it, I was like, oh, we should dig into that because I knew you'd have some
Yeah.
insights. I appreciate that. Cool. Well, cool. Thanks for joining us and all the great insights. I think maybe if we sum this up, the three things, right? You're looking when you look for an ideal candidate, you're looking for somebody who's willing to work their butt off, right? Put in the personal sweat equity to build the opportunity. Are they an entrepreneur, entrepreneur? Obviously, we're looking for entrepreneurs, someone who's willing to work hard within the process and make those processes better. And then we've got somebody who's willing to audit the current systems in place and work within them to make them better, not work outside of them, right? To try to build new ones, but to continually improve the system that they're working in.
Yeah. Fantastic summary. That's exactly it.
Rock on, man. Well, you've been awesome. I look forward to seeing you again soon, Colton. Thanks for joining us on the podcast.
Yeah. Thanks, Dave. I loved it.